Well, Tom, everybody will have just heard the clip from Zig talking about who you share your goals with. But when I asked the question to the Ziglar audience, there were some who didn't share them that much. And so I thought we would start off there and then go through the other categories. We actually got three categories of who people share with: everybody, only some people, and not so much of anyone. So good with starting there?
That's good. Let's do
All
it.
right. Patrick Kotenberg, he says, I don't have anything against sharing my goals with others, but typically, no, I don't. Others just don't ask. And I responded back. I said, they don't ask or you don't offer. And are you good with that? He says, my goals are for me. He says, I don't need approval. And I actually responded back and said, well, do you ever seek feedback? And he did not reply, which I thought was interesting, maybe a little bit telling. But, I get that. I get that my goals are for me. And in some sense, I would say, can I be strong enough, devout enough, disciplined enough to say, hey, here's my goal. And I just stick to it alone. And, there's two parts of it: sticking to it and getting feedback on your goals. So if you don't share it, you're not going to get feedback. But I guess, sure, if you're just, if you're that resolute that you don't need the accountability, you don't need the encouragement, I guess you can make a case for not sharing it. What do you think?
That's kind of one of those personal things. And as we've talked about this, I'm trying to dig in a little bit. What does it say about not sharing anything? And of course, I can only relate to that personally. There's been times in my life when I have started and not completed stuff like in a string, like this, and this. And I know for me, I wasn't sharing my goals with anybody. And so is that because I was concerned that I would be held accountable to that? Or was it that I really didn't have that big driving thing, that I was all gung ho and I was just kind of experimenting? And then as I matured, there's a lot of goals that I set that I don't share, but there are also some goals that I do share. So I'm kind of in that hybrid camp where I'm really careful about who I share goals with. Like I'm like really all in committed before I share a goal. And so what do you think? What is it about not sharing? What's the danger in that?
Well, here, I'll read this. Chris right here, Chris Williams, he says, no, I don't share because I can't find the right people to push me. He actually said, your podcast has brought me out of so many funks. I can't talk to you nor Tom individually, but you have really helped me on to be a better person. I was raised in the church and I changed churches, and still not many people push each other like you do. Thank you. Keep up the great podcast, which I'm grateful for. But obviously his first statement there, not finding the right people. And gosh, there's a couple, Tom. I'll just read here. Megan, she says, no, I did for a while share, and I found that I was constantly having to defend my dreams and goals. Now I keep them to myself and I chase them quietly. I keep a journal and listen to lots and lots of podcasts. Ben, right after, I used to share because I had the need to validate it by others and then would give up if they weren't as excited as I was. Now I only do it after about 5 days of sitting with the excitement and emotions before sharing for accountability. Stacy says, sometimes no, because I don't want people bringing me down when they don't believe in me as I do. So you can see that thread there. And we got a lot of responses of people who have, I'm going to paraphrase, been burned by sharing something. And maybe they got criticism. Maybe the other person just wasn't as excited. Now I've done that, Tom. I'll admittedly do that, where I've got a goal, man. And of course, I'm not thinking that I need validation. I need the excitement. But when I share it with somebody and they go, oh, like, seriously? Yep. And then you question yourself, well, maybe it's not that exciting, or maybe they don't believe in me. I mean, we are all human. And the best way to guard against any of that is just not to share, but then you miss out on the encouragement, the feedback, the accountability. But it's vulnerable. How about if we say that?
Yeah. And, there is a real, and I don't understand it, but it's a real cultural phenomenon. And one of the words I've heard for it is the crab pot mentality. And the idea, if there's a pot and a crab gets in it, it can crawl out. But if two crabs get in it, or more, then whoever's trying to crawl out, the other one's pulling back in. And so absolutely, no matter what the goal is, I would never encourage someone to share that goal with somebody who's going to naysay or downplay or tell them they can't do it. It just doesn't benefit you. It doesn't help you get there. In our Ziglar goal setting process, we have 7 steps. The first step is identify clearly what the goal is. The second step is to identify the obstacles or mountains to climb in order to achieve it. The third is the skills or knowledge. And the fourth is the people or outside help that I might need. And I think I want to differentiate there. So we're talking in the context of going to a peer, a friend, a family member, a coworker, somebody who you think would be an advocate, not necessarily somebody who's going to provide expertise in helping you achieve that goal, right? So that's the context of this. On a spiritual side, in one of my devotionals, I think it's Oswald Chambers, his utmost for my utmost for his highest. I think in one of the devotionals it says, hey, when God puts something on your heart, you don't go ask man for permission. And I hear some of that in the answers too, right? If you know it's on your heart to go and do, you don't need permission from other people to go and do it, especially in the spiritual context.
Yeah. And I do appreciate that. I do. You know, I that's that line of, I want to be confident, resolute. And if I feel like this is something that God wants, and you know what I'm thinking, I'm sitting here chewing on it, Tom, as you talked as well, and thinking about, there are some goals, because I tend to think, no, I share, I'm kidding myself. I don't. There are some that I kind of keep to myself. Between me and God, especially. And gosh, I think that's relevant. Well, I mean, the other side of this then, you know, if we're talking about the vulnerability of sharing it with somebody, is we've got some people who said, like Christopher Dunstan, I know Christopher, he says, I share with everyone. I welcome the criticism, positive or negative. It's very helpful in understanding all aspects and possibilities and pursuing my goals. And then he has, you know, the hashtag no fear, hashtag it's all for our growth. And right after him, Susie Bradley, I also know Susie. She said, yes, always. And I asked, I said, literally with anyone, everyone? She says, pretty much my clients, family, friends, they ask about my lifestyle, or I'm in a dental office. She works in a dental office. She has a coaching company. I love chatting about goal setting and catching others to set and slay my goals. It's so fun. Raquel, she says, generally I'm open about my dreams, goals, and aspirations, but I'm especially open to those I truly respect and look up to. I find that sharing my goals with them, I feel motivated and held accountable simply because I really do care what that person whom I respect thinks of me. But going back to the first two, Christopher and Susie. Now I know them. They're both outgoing, very outgoing. I mean, they're happy to go in a room, talk to people. And I would say they'd be good cold callers, you know. They're okay with rejection. They don't take things super personally like that. So that makes sense that they do that. Though I also, in knowing them, and again, man, I'm thinking out loud here. Do you know who Jeff Goins is? He's
I know
an
the name.
author.
Yeah.
He wrote something today, posted a question, and he says, who do you know? It was something to the effect of, who do you know who gets paid to create? And I thought, and I talked back and forth, because I thought he was really reaching out for who like, that's a unique thing. And I thought, man, I don't hardly know anybody who doesn't get paid to create, but that's just the circles that I have created. It's my, like Dan Buettner talks about with healthy people, it's my blue zones. I've surrounded myself. I don't have people in my life that, that just are fulfillers in that sense. Well, in the same way, I'm looking at Christopher and Susie and thinking they pretty much have their own little blue zones. I mean, they connect and commune with people who are the encouraging type, who are the supportive type, who are likewise going after goals. So maybe it's not, it's kind of like those surveys that you do. It's probably not a fair survey. It depends on that person. And those are people who most everyone they know, like you, like me, think, man, I don't have anybody I think who would be a naysayer in my life necessarily.
So here's a couple of thoughts, and I think this will kind of bring everybody into the effective zone.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, One of the studies on goal achievers that's really, really powerful is they discover that goal achievers do three things. And so whether you tell everybody about your goal or you keep it completely personal, if you want to raise your odds of actually achieving the goal,
Mm-hmm.
first you write it down in detail. Second, you work on it every day or as often as necessary. I mean, you're consistent in it. And the third one is you have an accountability partner. And so the danger of not sharing your goals with anyone is you are your own accountability partner.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, so here's another strategy. Strategy number 2. I believe that we all need mentors and or coaches in our life. And at Ziglar, we teach the wheel of life. We teach the 7 areas: mental, spiritual, physical, family, financial, personal, and career. And so it's a great life plan to seek out somebody in your, in your circle of influence, or somebody who's respected in each one of those areas, and develop a relationship with them and just let them know, hey, is it okay if I come to you and ask you questions from time to time?
Yeah.
And so, as you know, we've had a great sponsor on the show in the past with MetPro, and I got a coach from them, and I re-engaged with the coach from them because they're experts in the physical side of life. And the first thing I did was, here's my goal. How do I get there? But I had qualified who I'm sharing that goal with.
Yeah.
Because I know that the input I'm going to get back is going to be practical, realistic, encouragement based on a long record of things. The third piece of advice, because some people are listening and are like, well, I just don't get goals. I've never really been goal driven, goal motivated. 80% of the population gets more excited about solving problems. And what we teach is that goal setting and solving problems are it's the same coin, but they're two sides of it. And I'll use the weight loss example. I want to lose 20. My goal is to lose 20 pounds. I want to weigh 189. Okay. So everybody knows my goal now. January 1 is the date. Why is that?
Tom, I don't think you can do it. Who do you think you are setting a goal like that?
I called Angelo at MedPro, and he's
Right.
he's like, yeah, we can do that. Yeah. So there we go. So there's the goal. And I want to weigh 189. Now, the other way I could look at it is, I've got a problem. I weigh 20 pounds too much. Either way, I've just come at it from two different directions. So if you're a problem solver, you might just want to change the way you talk to yourself about a goal. Hey, you know what? Solving a problem is exactly the same steps as accomplishing a goal. Yeah. Because you've got to identify what the problem is, the obstacles and barriers you've got to overcome, the people you've got to talk to, the skills and knowledge you've got to acquire, the plan of action. All of these different things come into play. But I've found for me that, well, like on the audio clip from Dad, the give up goals, you tell everybody because you want them to hold you accountable. And it doesn't really matter whether they're on your side or not, right? In fact, Dad had in his personal life, there were some people who were rooting against him, and that motivated him, right? I'll show them. You've got to be strong and understand what that does. So.
And that's, I don't mean to say that I've never had a naysayer, and I've got people who care about me enough that they're not just going to blindly encourage me in anything. And I do appreciate that, but even that is weighty. Sometimes you hear that advice. I mean, how many people on my bookshelf behind me are people who did some huge thing, and people who cared about them, people who were wise, people who knew more about whatever they were trying to do, told them that they couldn't do it or cautioned them in it. And they did it anyways. And that's weighty. It's interesting, Tom. I told my oldest son, Caleb, who, not long ago, there was an issue that he was dealing with and talking with his mom and with me. And I said, buddy, I said, one thing I want to tell you from the bottom of my heart is watch out how much weight you put on your mom and dad's perspective. Because it was about an issue, and we were healthfully debating it, my wife and I, about she saw a different one side, I saw another, but ultimately, then I said, "But you got to watch out because only you know what you're capable of." Well, actually, nobody knows what you're capable of, including yourself. So I can't say to you, but watch out because his tendency is to make decisions based on our perspective. And I mean, I have big things I've accomplished in my life that I can't say that my own father, who may be listening to this, that he ever told me, "Oh, you can't do that." But there are some things he cautioned me about that I went and did anyways, and they worked out well. Now, I didn't come back and go, "See, proved you wrong," because he didn't say I couldn't do it. He just said, "I'm concerned about some areas," and he was right with those. And I had to, though, take those and decide what I was going to do. Man, to have somebody like that, like your father, especially a good father like we had, who we respect, and know has wisdom, it's hard sometimes to realize I still have to know my own truth in this arena, and yeah, what God is calling me to.
And here's another mindset that's really, really important, especially for people who are maybe you felt the sting of setting a goal, going after it, getting close, and then it doesn't happen, right? Or life happens to you and you get derailed, or the people who you thought were on your side suddenly gang up against you and seemingly hold you back. One of the most powerful mindsets you can have is that the purpose of going after the goal isn't to necessarily achieve the goal. It is to learn and grow and become the kind of person that takes those steps. And so I know in my past, early on, I'd go to dad and I'd have what we would call a BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal, just something big. And he would always encourage me and remind me that, hey, it's sweet when you achieve the goal, but it's not nearly as important as the person you become along the way. And I know so many people who set out to go after the big goal or to go after something that people say, "Oh, you can't do that." And they got down, they went after it 100%. And then on the path, they found a better goal because they took those first steps and they veered and they look back on it and they go, "Man, I'm so glad I didn't finish my original task. But I'm so glad I also went after it because
Yeah.
the person I became and what I learned, I wouldn't have learned if I hadn't gone for it."
Absolutely. Goodness, absolutely. To what you said a minute ago, Tom, Cindy Sipes here, she says, it's so important for my encouragement and accountability, having that gentle push or cheerleading or having someone who can see how to break it down in a more realistic or attainable goal is extremely helpful. When I keep things to myself, I tend to come up with reasons or excuses not to do it, or I'm too hard on myself if I don't accomplish when I thought I should have. So she's talking to the feedback and to the accountability that you can have when you've got those healthy, relationships. This is an interesting one too, Tom. Charlotte Tamayo, she says, I have an accountability team of 11 other women in a similar field. None of us live in the same region. We encourage each other and pray over the important areas of life, especially to shine our light through our businesses, keeping God in first place. And I responded back, said, "Oh my gosh, that's just tremendous, Charlotte." She says, "Kevin, we love it. Our ladies had a conference with our larger team this past week, and on their way home have been traveling to meet up with those too busy to go. It really has been the best women's ministry / business group I've ever been a part of. The great thing is that we now are starting to make local chapters to encourage more women to lead their business with God at the helm." Thinking about that, it got me thinking about mentors. We've just recently been talking about that with Kevin Harrington and Mark Tim with their Mentor to Millions book. And when I had Mark on the show and talked about finding a mentor, how do you find a mentor? And part of that was just to ask, so in that same spirit here, what about finding some people? If you find that you are one of those people and maybe you don't have a real supportive family, you may not even have a supportive spouse to some degree, or you don't have supportive coworkers or friends, or you just don't have many friends, you're isolated. Can you go out and find a group to be accountable with specifically for that. Now you can find affinity groups. You know, I've been promoting Hydro, this rowing machine, and they've got these great online communities. And of course, people are on there just encouraging each other. And, you know, that's great in that sense. But I've got a group on Monday morning, Christian businessmen. There's probably 15, 17, 18 guys all around the country, all influencers. And we do a call, and the point of it is to ask, to give a praise and to ask what your main prayer is. And what you find out, the prayer is usually what's most weighing on them right now. And that's going to be a marital issue, a parenting issue, or a business issue, or a health issue. Those are generally the four that come up, and it's pretty consistent or pretty even amongst those. But that's a group. I mean, so to what Charlotte's saying, to find a group and say, find some other people who are, let's call them aspiring people in your life. I think if you look around in your church, in your workplace, in your frame of reference of people, of social groups, who are the aspiring people, and say, hey, what would you think about getting together once a week for 30 minutes on Zoom at a coffee shop, whatever, and just sharing that? What is one of the things that Pete Vargas has done with a lot of leaders is get them together and ask, what is working well for you right now? Mainly focused on this, what's working well and what's not. And the what's not has pulled out because nobody talks about that. And so to have these leaders come together and talk about what's not, they get support and encouragement for that one. And they generally get somebody to go, man, I could help you with that. I'm really strong there. I have a resource or something like that there. So powerful to do that, especially if you find yourself, if you're listening right now and feel like, gosh, I don't have those people in my life, to go find them. I mean, you can pay for them. You can pay for a coach or consultant to help you support, encouragement, accountability, and wisdom, feedback.
Absolutely. I think in the book, Born to Win, there's a whole chapter on picking a mentor. And we go through the steps in there. And, one of the ones that I learned personally was that if you have somebody you would love to ask to be a mentor, and they're in that status or that realm where you, in your mind, you envision other people are probably asking them too, they're not going to be interested. Who are you to ask? Here's what I've discovered. If you go in passionately and request that 10 or 15 minute meeting, and you say, I would really like for you to be my mentor. Here's what I'm trying to do. What would your advice be? And I know we've only got 10 minutes because that's how long the call is or whatever. And they tell you what it is. And then you say, is it okay if I reach out to you in 2 weeks with an update? And then in 2 weeks, when you go back for the update, you show them exactly what you've taken action on. And that's how mentors get excited, because usually mentors, somebody says, well, can you help me out? Yeah, sure. You give them some advice. They see you a month later. Hey, how's that going? Well, I haven't really started yet. And there you go. You've lost that opportunity because are they going to keep putting time and energy into it? The second thing is when you're going to get input from someone, instead of saying, hey, I've got this big idea, what do you recommend? What if you went a little bit more direct and a little bit more specific, and you said something like this, hey, here's my big idea. I've written it down clearly. Let me share that with you. Give me your feedback on it. And then you say, I think this is going to help me in my life, and here are the benefits that I've written down. What benefits do you think it would help me? And so what this does is, when you go through the 7 steps that we teach in the goal setting, is it takes away some of the negativity that somebody might automatically have, and it gets their mind focused on what you can do. Now, when I work with somebody, I ask them, okay, how does this goal that you're going after, how does it get you closer to your purpose? And here's the big one. A lot of people are afraid to set goals or to share their goals because they haven't clearly identified their purpose. When your purpose is clear, when your why is clear, and you have a goal that supports it, now you have something bigger than you drawing you into it and compelling you. And then when you've got a trusted advisor, a friend, a mentor, a spouse, a family member, a coworker who understands your purpose, your bigger, it's like the lady with the 11 women. I mean, they have a unique group, and I'm sure they've shared their why and their purpose and what they're trying to accomplish. That is nearly an unstoppable force of people, right? When you get that together. So those are just a couple of things.
And I love that, Tom. I missed that when I first started out Free Agent Academy, helping people pursue self-employment. I did that. I just wanted to know, hey, what's your, what do you want to do? What's your idea? And let's go make it happen. And I, over time, realized I kept having to backtrack and start off right with what you said, to go, okay, I want to, create this business. I got this idea. Why? I wasn't initially open to that or cognizant of that. I said, okay, let's go. And then you start running aground and having issues, and then had to come back to it. And I learned that the hard way in some sense. Hey, I want to make one quick statement, or just give a resource on what you said about mentors, about asking, somebody to be that, because I know that happens to you, Tom, and I get asked as well. So in episode 723 of the Ziglar Show, I had on a guy named Phil M. Jones. For those who are watching the video, there's the cover of one of his books. And this one is Exactly What to Say. He has another one. What is it? Exactly Where to Start. But the guy's a great sales guy. And he starts off, and this is a sales tactic to talk to somebody. He says, I'm not sure if it's for you, but, and he talks about the psychology. It takes it away. It's not a pressure sell. Okay. I like that from a mentor standpoint. And I'm thinking specifically because I was asked, it's been a little while, but I was asked by a guy to be a mentor, and he just knew what I did and said, I want you to be my mentor. And he would have been a good one to ask that. I'm not sure if it's for you, but this is what I want to do. And I'm looking for mentoring in this, because when it came down to it, what he was doing, I was not a good fit for. He just saw, I had success in some areas, but what he literally was looking for mentoring in was an area that I'm ignorant in. It's just not a good skill set. So what a great way. For one, it makes me not feel super pressured right off the bat, to go, oh, I want you to be my mentor. Will you please? It kind of offsets that. So I'm not sure if you're the right mentor for me, but this is what I'm looking for mentoring in. And it's also just honest, because not everybody is the best mentor. If somebody wants a financial mentor, well, Dave Ramsey would be pretty good. But if you want it for an endurance athletic pursuit, not sure he'd be your guy. It's everybody who's success in one area does not beget success everywhere. So there's my little pitch on that for those of you who are out there looking. I did want to read one real quick before we jump into the last category. RB Williams, he says, I share with everybody. It helps keep me motivated. Plus, you never know if you share your goal, or who you share your goal with, who can help you. I like that, man. If I went right on and right now and said, hey, I've got a goal of whatever, and I put it even on Facebook, I would get some people who would, well, like that. If I said, finance, I'd have 100 people say, hey, I'm a financial coach. I can help you, or I can give you a resource. If I did that on an athletic endeavor, I'd have people jumping out of the woodwork that know that area. So that is relevant to set something out there, and you never know who might be able to help you, to support you, to encourage you, to give you a resource.
I just smiled because that's how I got to play the Masters in Augusta, Georgia. Dad was, this was right after college. So I was like 25 years old, and Dad was traveling all over. He was doing a lot of public events, and he was teaching goal setting, mainly the mindset of goal setting. And he would talk about, how to set a goal. And I said, well, Dad, what are your goals? And one of his goals at that time was to play the top 100 golf courses in the United States, the ranking. And I said, Dad, you should tell, when you're doing the goals examples, that that's one of your goals. And the next thing I know, he starts getting invited to go play golf, right? So he's going to be in that town anyway.
Yeah.
Goes in a day early. And so soon after that, he got invited to go and play the Masters in Augusta. And he said, I'm going to ask the person who asked me if you can come too. And so we got to go. And that was the ultimate, 2-night father-son golf trip ever. And the host that had us was unbelievable. And as you know, just as golf fans watching that on TV, but yeah, so that idea of you never know who can help you.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of goal that you would share with other people. I've mentioned, hey, I'd like to have a house in the mountains, and people all the time, well, why don't you come stay at my house? I mean, you know what I mean? It's just, it's kind of cool.
Hey, Tom, why don't you come stay at my house?
I know you've told me that like 50 times.
Yeah, I know. You haven't been here in like 2 years or so.
I know.
We miss
and I've
you.
taken you up on it twice, I think.
I think you have. Yeah, twice now. Yep. Well, so here are some folks who said, I do, but only with specific people. And the first one I'm going to pull out is Richard Powell. He says, only with my wife. He says it's a trust issue with others. Too many disappointments, too many naysayers, and I have found very few supporters. Okay, well, that issue I think we kind of talked about, but I'm going to pull out with his wife. Now, if you have a spouse who you can share everything with, that is obviously such a gift. I mean, I think to some degree it's hard to have a marriage where you can't do that. That's a deficit if you can't share openly about your goals and dreams. But I wanted to pull it out because, and I've shared this before, in my marriage. Now, can I share my goals and dreams, any goal and dream with my wife and be, safe and secure and get her support? Yes, primarily. Sometimes I have shared goals that have scared her, because if I share my goal with you, Tom, and it's some big, hairy, audacious goal, and it doesn't sound like I'm going to harm myself, seems, reasonably, you're going to go, man, that's awesome. Yeah, go for it. And then we're going to hang up the phone and go our separate ways and go home to our wives and whatnot. When I share it with my wife, she's living with that. And if it feels like something that might jeopardize our finances, our stability, my time with them or whatever, it affects her. So it's not fair to expect. I think we have differing people for different things. There's stuff that I share with Randy. He's one of my closest friends. And I'm aware of that, though. He didn't have to go home. It's not going to affect his finances. Not that he won't give me constructive criticism, but that's one thing I think we need to be sensitive to, is how is this going to affect, especially your spouse? That's an anomaly there that you would think, gosh, you should have support, but you got to be sensitive to it. One, and two, with the breadth of it too. And I've shared this before, where I tend to make these big, hairy, audacious goals. And my analogy that came acutely to my awareness through talking with my wife is I'm shooting for the stars. All right. Next year, we're going to make $1 million more than we made this year. Right. And she's okay. So she's making plans, man. She hears me. She believes it. Let's do it. And, we get further into the year and I only made 200 grand more. I'm thinking, man, it's 200 grand more than last year. That's awesome. She's devastated. She was making plans, for that. She had ideas for the kids and things that we were going to do and whatnot. And I've learned to temper them a little bit and to say, look, I've got a goal, and I'll tell her, hey, this is the low end. I'm hoping I'll do this, of course. And I'll say, honey, I'm hoping for more. But I think, this is a reasonable, and I'll literally tell her that I've got her support. I've got her encouragement. She's not going to be disappointed. And I get the opportunity to underpromise and overdeliver. And so there's dealing, one, with the reality of a spouse who shares life with you, and two, just a different personality style as well. So again, I'm free to share fully my goals. I don't hide my goals. I don't have a wife where I can't share the goals, but I am sensitive. Is that fair, Tom?
I think sensitive is good. A trusted spouse, a lot of times the feedback they give you is great counsel, because you don't want to go and take the risk. I have a good friend. His name is Paul Sullivan, his wife, Karen, and every year they do a 3-day weekend, and they have a list, and he has his list of 100 goals that he wants to achieve during the year. And she has her 100. And these are big to little, right? I mean, like eating in a certain restaurant, to taking a trip, to, a big thing like a marathon. And so every year they get together, they take last year's list, they cross off all the ones they accomplished. Then they add back, and then they take the ones off that no longer they care about, because if you have 100 goals, you may have lost your taste for some of them.
Yeah.
And then they add some more back in till each have 100. Now, this is what's cool. They trade lists. And so all year, Karen is Karen is focusing on how she can help Paul achieve his goals. And Paul is focused on Karen's goals and how he can help her. And so what happens is, maybe Karen wants to go to a resort or a place in the mountains, and then Paul's got a business trip that's going to take him into that area of the country. He calls her up, "Hey, you're coming with me, right? We're going to cross that goal off." And it's just
That's awesome.
it's a really, really cool thing to do, because it gets that family on the same page, and it gets two people rooting for each other.
Yeah, man, I love that. My wife did that not long ago with me. She instigated, and it was kind of a home and family focus, not business, finance, whatever, home and family focus. And she did her list, and I did mine, and we shared them and took the similarities and made those the priorities. Obviously, these are what we both share. Let's make those top, but also talk about the ones where we didn't have that on a radar for each other, and how can we honor those. So I love that story, Tom. Well, here's a couple here. Carrie Mitchell, she says, I share with my boyfriend and a small group of select friends because they are also achievers, supportive, and optimistic people. Wade Maines, he says, a few true friends. We need to seek wise counsel. My reason is some people may dissuade you. Example, my father did about me being an entrepreneur. He thought it was a bad idea, too much work. I went into the military instead, tried regular jobs, never was satisfied. And I realized it was not his dream or his vision. So he couldn't relate to mine. Brandon Russell says, I've learned to keep things closer to my chest now, not because of my fear, but simply because of those types of things should be for people worthy of the information. We do need people to hold us accountable, but it's counterproductive if they are not on our side, not supportive, I'd say. If we pick the wrong people, it could be more detrimental than helpful. So we're hearing that thread. And of course, that's what Zig, talked to, is again, being so sensitive somewhat to who are we sharing this? And I do have, and I know you, Tom, have, man, I've been so burdened to see some well-meaning people share things with those close to them and get shot down, and how devastating it is for them. And this sounds harsh, but we've got the scripture in Proverbs of, don't cast your pearls before swine. Now, I don't think we need to call any of our close family swine, but we just got to realize, like what Brandon said, we've got people, maybe close to you who don't have the same vision, don't have the same personality style. They may have their own damage over here, and they can't see well for you. And that's sad, but it is true. So finding the right people, though, I also, Tom, and I've fallen into this sometimes. It's also, we have a confirmation bias. And I can also tend to want to go and just share only with the people who I know will encourage me in this area, and not share it with the people who I figure, they're probably going to give me some constructive criticism, which I don't want, man, because I want to do this. I'm ready to go. And I've got to be mature enough to deal with that as well.
Yep, absolutely. And, the constructive criticism, I guess what I look for is, if I share a goal with somebody and I really want their input, I'm asking them to say, "Hey, tell me what I got to do and what I need to avoid in order to have the best chance of succeeding at this."
That's great. That's excellent. Yeah. Here, this one does it. He does a good job. Terry Johnson, neat guy, businessman from Australia, place you like. He says, I share with my kids, my wife, and my employees. He says, it can be a little awkward at times, but so critical. When I ask him, awkward how? And he says, well, your goals are like an insight into your feelings, your attitude, and your plans, both financially and personally. If you're a guarded and private person, letting someone, or anyone for that matter, know your goals, as an example, like wanting to lose weight or retire in so many years with much amount of money, it can be construed as being used to form judgment or opinions against you, like letting someone know your inner secrets. But I think it's important to be transparent with the parties your goals can or will affect. Which is
Right
what I was
on.
talking about with wife. Well, and that would be relevant to you, Tom. Now, you've had times of having, a lot of employees, and to go in there and to share a goal that somebody could hear and go, oh my gosh, if that happens, am I still going to have a job? Or am I going to be forced to travel? I don't want to do it. So again, being sensitive to how it's going to affect these other people. And yeah, I keep coming back to thinking about how that's probably one of the area that I have to watch out for. I'm pretty confident, so I don't mind if somebody's critical or whatever, but I can probably find myself often sharing only with those people who I think are going to tell me what I want to hear.
Yep. Well, that's our tendency. We all want
Yeah.
the positive feedback.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I hope this did a good job, and it's great. I mean, there's so many comments. We got a lot. I'll tell you, it would take another hour to go through the ones that said only to specific people. That was the majority. So that we found, so if I took this as a survey, I should have had them tally it up. But if I took this as a survey, we would have the vast majority, probably 2/3, maybe not quite that much, who said, I do share my goals. I am, I would say the message we hear is an advocacy of sharing goals for feedback, wisdom, guidance, counsel, accountability, support, encouragement. I do share goals, but with specific people, that I'm judicious with who I share them with. The next biggest group was the share it with everyone. And then the smallest was not sharing it at all. And I think, of course, we would say, interestingly, on Zig's message, he didn't even have a category for not sharing it at all. He didn't even address that. His assumption was we are going to. Now, but going back to where we started, is there ever a place for having a goal that is private? And I would have to admit, now that I'm thinking about it, there are some that I don't share. I think it's between God and me, and maybe I think it will affect other people. And so I'm going to keep that there. It's pretty rare, but occasionally.
Yep.
Yeah.
Same here.
Yeah.
A few.
Well, good food for thought for us. And again, man, thanks for all the great ones. Yeah. I've got that sticking on me. I got to think right now, do I have any goals that I'm doing right now that I'm not sharing with the people who I think might give me constructive criticism? Because I don't want to hear it, because I just want to do what I want to do. All right, there we go. I'll leave with that. Tom, brother, always a gift.
Yes. Awesome.